Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Josh Wilkinson, and I am serving as your worship assistant today. I come to this church because I haven't figured out life's questions, and I want to learn more about being in relationship together. How to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We also strive to welcome people across diversities of race, age, ability, immigration status, and belief. So whoever you are, wherever you have come from, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We encourage everyone to visit our website, brazos-uu.org. During this time of pandemic, and in the midst of our planned building project, the website and our weekly services are our church home. If you might like to contribute your musical talents, if you have a great story to share about your life's journey, or if you have a passion for social justice, we would love to hear from you. If you are interested in getting involved, you can find opportunities on our website. To learn more about our community and what is happening, you can join our email list and our monthly newsletter, and you can also find us on social media by searching UUCBV. Our service today is continuing to explore our monthly theme of acceptance. Earlier this month, we explored accepting ourselves, and today we explore accepting others. What does it mean to know, accept, even love, perhaps, others that we meet in our lives?
Our opening reading this morning comes from Kimberly Ann Tomzak Carlson. It's called A Place of Belonging and Caring. It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilling a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource that belongs to all of us when we share. And so, you began looking for a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home. Welcome to worship.
Thank you, Reverend Christian. I invite you to light your own chalice if you have one, as I light our chalice today. Please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of the life of truth and meaning we share together. Now all please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me? Stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me? Comfort me tenderly. Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
Enemy Pie by Derek Munson. Illustrated by Tara Callahan King. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next door to my best friend Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out in a baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline and I wasn't even invited, but my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved to the neighborhood, but as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse, where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew a way to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said. He pulled a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. Inside there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted at it. Enemy pie, he said, satisfied. You may be wondering what exactly is in enemy pie. I was wondering too, but Dad said the recipe was so secret he couldn't even tell me. I decided it must be magic. I begged him to tell me something, anything. I will tell you this, he said. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies. Now, of course, this got my mind working. What kinds of things, disgusting things, would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he'd need those. I gave him the gum I'd been chewing on all morning. He gave it right back to me. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck on the roof. I threw a boomerang that never came back to me, and all the while I listened to the sounds of my dad chopping and stirring and blending the ingredients of enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it would look like. But when I was in the backyard looking for ladybugs, I smelled something really, really good. And as far as I could tell, it was coming from our kitchen. I was a bit confused. I went in to ask Dad what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good. But Dad was smart. If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it, he said. I could tell he'd made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang, and Dad put on the oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on. But still, I wasn't really sure how this enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. I asked Dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. He talked quietly. There is one part of enemy pie that I can't do. In order for it to work, you need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but that's the only way that enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Of course I was. It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross, and then he would be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house and knocked on his door. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood on the other side of the screen door and looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I was nervous. Can you play? I asked. He looked confused. I'll go ask my mom, he said. He came back with his shoes in his hand. His mom walked around the corner to say hello. You boys stay out of trouble, she said, smiling. We rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made some water balloons and threw them at kids in the neighborhood, but we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch, and after lunch we went over to my house. It was strange, but I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice. But of course I couldn't tell Dad that, since he had worked so hard to make this enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished he had a basketball hoop, but they didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, to be nice. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it and it came right back to him. I threw it and it went over my house and into the backyard. When we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. Now, my treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to let her. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him. And if Jeremy wanted in, can we go in it? He asked. I knew he was going to ask me that. But he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list, and enemies are not allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me how to throw a boomerang, and he did have me over for lunch, and he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up ahead of him and tore the enemy list off the wall. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until Dad called us down for dinner. We pretended we didn't hear him. When he came out to get us, we tried to hide from him, but somehow he found us. Dad made us macaroni and cheese for dinner, my favorite. It was Jeremy's favorite, too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about the enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie. I watched as he cut the pie into 8 thick slices. Dad, I said, it sure is nice having a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy. But Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. Dad dished up 3 plates side by side with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream. He passed one to me and one to Jeremy. Wow, Jeremy said, looking at the pie. My dad never makes pies like this. It was at this point that I panicked. I did not want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. Jeremy, don't eat it. It's bad pie. I think it's poisonous or something. Jeremy's fork stopped before reaching his mouth. He crumbled his eyebrows and looked at me funny. I felt relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero. If it's so bad, Jeremy asked, then why has your dad already eaten half of it? I turned to look at my dad. Sure enough, he was eating enemy pie. Good stuff, he mumbled through a mouthful. And that was all he said. I sat there watching them eat enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing, Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough, so I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he'd teach me how to flip. As for enemy pie, I still don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out, or their breath turns bad. But I don't know if I'll ever get an answer, because I just lost my best enemy.
Our prayer today is by the Reverend Jude Geiger. He writes, Spirit of hope, God of many names, source of love, may we pause before the quiet of the hour, taking in another week past, preparing ourselves for the week to come, and remembering to remain present to the moment before us. Even amidst the busyness and the turmoil and the anticipation that all surrounds us, we come seeking wells of nourishment, friendship in a world that's sometimes cold, and joy from friends old and new. Teach us to accept love and care when we are in need, and patience when we are not. And in our times of long ease, shake us from complacency, for our world needs our care, our attention, and our hands. Mother of love, we gather this hour as a community of hope, dedicated to the work of building a world centered in peace, grounded in compassion for one another, and seeking new ways to nurture justice in the many corners of our lives. And at the turning and returning in this new stage of reopening our towns and cities inch by inch or step by step, we pause to reflect on all the many challenges of the year past, the violence in a world that we all too often can't seem to stem or even make sense of, the bickering of our nation's leaders, which always seems to leave the poorest of us worse for it, and the challenges in our personal lives. Work where it may be hard to find, a home that may be hard to afford, sicknesses and loss in our families and among our friends. May we find strength to witness what we must and love to make the world better for our presence. At the turning of this strange global wheel, we pause to remember the places and moments of joy in our lives. Reconnecting with that old friend we haven't seen in years, our successes in our classes or on the field, or that one sunset. The slow movement forward for civil rights in our nation for all people. The job interview that finally came, a community that loves you. With each challenge, there is a place within us and around us where we can find the strength we need to do the work at hand. In hope, in prayer, and now in silence, may we find it when we need. Please join me in a few quiet moments of reflection. Amen. As we do each week, we take a time to share those joys and concerns, sorrows and milestones most on our hearts and minds. If you have something you would like to share, you can do so in the chat box at any time, and we will all share it with you. There are a few things I wanted to lift up in particular. First, a couple concerns from our own community. For our dear member Alice Scott's daughter Vanessa, who died last week. We're with Alice in this time, giving support and love as they grieve the loss of their beloved daughter. We suffered another loss in our community too, our dear member Bob Fountain, who was a part of this community for a number of years before moving recently down to Houston. He died this Saturday, and he will be very much missed. A memorial is planned for the 23rd for him. More details to come. In addition to these personal joys and concerns for our community, we lift up those going on all over the world. For those suffering the effects of the coronavirus, particularly in India, where it is raging, medical supplies are in short supply, and people are dying at rates we haven't seen through this pandemic yet. For the people of India and for all those all over the world suffering from the effects of the coronavirus, we grieve with you. We're glad at the same time that in much of the world, and particularly in our own country, vaccines are becoming more and more available. We're thankful that there is perhaps on the horizon an end to this pandemic. We remember, as we do each week, that Black lives matter, and that until they truly matter to everyone in this country as much as all other lives, we will not be whole. We strive in our congregation and in our larger community for justice, equity, and anti-racism. For these and for all of those joys and sorrows that go unmentioned, we lift our hearts and our minds in support for all of them. Please, if you haven't yet shared, there's still plenty of time to do so in the chat box as you're able. And again, this community supports you in both your joy and your sorrow, and always will.
Today's reading is called On Friendship by Khalil Gibran, 1883 to 1931. And a youth said, "Speak to us of friendship." And he answered, saying, "Your friend is your needs answered. He is your field which you sow with love and reap with thanksgiving. And he is your board and your fireside. For you come to him with your hunger, and you seek him for peace. When your friend speaks his mind, you fear not the nay in your own mind, nor do you withhold the I. And when he is silent, your heart ceases not to listen to his heart. For without words, in friendship, all thoughts, all desires, all expectations are born and shared, with joy that is unacclaimed. When you part from your friend, you grieve not. For that which you love most in him may be clearer in his absence, as the mountain to the climber is clearer from the plain. And let there be no purpose in friendship save the deepening of the spirit. For love that seeks aught but the disclosure of its own mystery is not love, but a net cast forth, and only the unprofitable is caught. And let your best be for your friend. If he must know the ebb of your tide, let him know its flood also. For what is your friend that you should seek him with hours to kill? Seek him always with hours to live. For it is his to fill your need, but not your emptiness. And in the sweetness of your friendship, let there be laughter and sharing of pleasures. For in the dew of little things, the heart finds its morning and is refreshed.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to share a song with you today that I really love. It's a setting of the metta meditation from the Buddha. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy. Starting with a practice of compassion towards ourselves, and then gradually extending that compassion outward to the entire world. So that first, if we can extend compassion to ourselves, we can then extend compassion to the people that we know, and maybe the people that we see, and maybe the people that we haven't even heard about and don't even know about, is the idea. So I'm going to teach you this melody. I learned it from a colleague of mine, Amy Menard, and I wrote a harmonization. So I'll sing a line and invite you to sing that line back to me. It goes like this. May I be filled with loving kindness. Try that. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. Your turn. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. Together. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy. The last line. And may I be happy. So in a second, we will sing that all again. And then we'll change the word I to the word you, and then to we, and finally to all. And between each verse, I'm going to just play a little instrumental music, and I just invite us to really meditate during that time on what we're singing and what we're saying, and endeavor to feel some of that compassion for ourselves and for others. Let's start with May I Be Filled. And may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be happy. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. And may we be happy. May all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. And may all be happy. Thanks, everyone.
Do I have to? Maybe you've heard this question too, perhaps from a young person in your life, or maybe someone not so young. Do I have to? Usually in that slightly or more than slightly whiny tone. Now, I've said this exact thing in my head more than a few times at things that I was not very excited about. And that's especially true when it comes to spiritual growth. Each hurdle in that growth feels like that. Do I have to? Now, one of my growing edges, as we call them, which some of you will no doubt already know about, either because you've seen it or I've told you, is patience. I was not, and in some ways am still not, a very patient person. Now, this does not always work well in life, as no doubt you have already learned, and it certainly does not work with church life, where, as also you likely know, we measure things not necessarily in days or weeks or even months, but in years and decades. This building project we will break ground on next month has been 25 years in the making in a very real sense. And so this interim ministry I'm doing for a year is a short time, really. You have to be patient to do this work of church, and I still sometimes struggle with that, though I've worked on that and grown so much in the last decade. But still, it often feels like do I have to? Do I have to wait? Do I have to be patient? But all this month, our theme in worship is acceptance, and today we're particularly tackling the idea of accepting others. I know many of you were here a couple weeks ago when I preached on accepting ourselves, which is tough in so many ways. And no less easy, I would say, is accepting others. I mean, not all others, right? There are people who are easy to like, after all, our friends, most of the time. Those parts of our family we like, perhaps some of our coworkers or some of our neighbors. Yes, there are people who are easy to like. But there are those who aren't. And I suppose that's really what we're talking about today. I loved Khalil Gibran's words about friendship because they express so beautifully the parts of being a friend, of having that reciprocal relationship. But in the sermon today, I want to talk about the harder one, which is accepting people that we might not like. Now, after all, Jesus, that incredible prophet, famously says we are to love your neighbor as yourself, which is not as simple as the phrase makes it sound. First, it seems that we have to love ourselves if we're going to be successful at this, and as I preached 2 weeks ago, that is no easy thing. But then I suppose we should think at some point about what love really means. Is it to value or to honor, to have affection for? What kind of affection? Or to support? Perhaps all of those things and more, or maybe just some of them, or something else. I don't know that I know fully. And then there's the part where we have to talk about who our neighbor is. Does Jesus mean the people who literally live next to us? Probably. But maybe also the people we interact with in our community. I'm going to go with yes on that one. I think that is what he means. But also, what about the people that we may never meet, but with whom we have important, albeit indirect, connections. Let me offer a quick story. One of my seminary professors, Dr. Benjamin Valentin, told us this one in class one day. He said, one time I went to the grocery store to get some canned pineapple, just one can of pineapple. Presumably this was for some recipe or perhaps for a young child or something. And he says, as I was paying, the can goes down the conveyor, the clerk picks it up, scans it, it makes that beep. And he said, I said a prayer. Oh, please forgive me for this. Now you might ask why, and he gives this answer. He says, I know that pineapple that I bought in that can was almost certainly grown and picked and processed by people in a tropical locale halfway around the world, by those people who are paid an incredibly low wage to do that work. And those people are basically tied to that work because there are probably no other opportunities in their community for any sort of work. And even worse than that, the people who employ them know that and intentionally keep it that way. And all of this system is that so that I can have cheap canned pineapple. So in other words, by buying this can of pineapple, I'm supporting a system that oppresses people and forces them to stay in dangerous, difficult, low-paying jobs. Now, this is what theologians call systemic evil. That is, my professor, Dr. Valentin, is not doing anything himself that's evil. There's nothing evil about going to the store and buying canned pineapple per se. It's not even bad. But he knows, and I know, that it's connected with a whole system that is doing oppressive things to people in our world. People I will never meet. But knowing that means that I'm tied into that system. Actually, not knowing it would still mean I'm tied into that system. But now that I know about it, I have to wrestle with that and think about what, if anything, I'm going to do about it. And so my question in all of this, to come back to where we were earlier, is that pineapple picker on the other side of the world, who I will almost certainly never meet, also my neighbor? Am I called to love him? And if so, what does love mean, and what does it call me to do? What does it even mean to love people I know, but whom I don't have particularly warm feelings about, for that matter? What does it mean to love the neighbor who doesn't keep up their yard, or the coworker who is often rude, or the person who loudly supports every political position I despise? Which brings me back to the beginning. Do I have to? Do I really have to love those people? For me, it helps to make the distinction between like and love. Loving others for me means valuing their inherent worth and dignity, as our UUA principles put it. It means thinking that they are deserving of basic rights and of opportunities and of the same good chances that I have had, or even better. It doesn't mean I have to feel warm and fuzzy about them. So, to go right there, the most extreme example of this perhaps is when people ask about Hitler. Does this mean I have to love him? And I say, well, again, let's talk about love. It doesn't mean you have to approve of his actions. I certainly don't. It doesn't mean you have to let him or people like him keep doing evil things. It certainly doesn't mean you need to take them out to lunch or give them equal time in a debate about their odious little ideas. It does mean, though, that we value all human lives, that we care about people for the beings they are, even if we disagree about the choices they make and the lives they live. That's not easy, as I feel like I keep saying over and over again this month. It's not easy because it's true. We have to love people despite some of the things they do. It's also complicated to love people who are doing things that we think are bad. How do we love those we disagree with? Part of it is by holding boundaries. We do not compromise who we are just to get along, and that can be an unpleasant thing too. I can think of some holiday family gatherings in which I've had to navigate this as best I could. Maybe you've had the same experience. It means continuing to fight for the things we disagree with, but without dehumanizing those who oppose us. And I know we can do that too. We can accept and love others. We have to. Friends, it's part of our calling as Unitarian Universalists, as people, to learn to accept and love others. It's not easy. It's work that will challenge us. It will force us to change who we are in important ways. So, friends, love your neighbor. Accept others. And go out into the world boldly to live and love. May it be so.
If we were having worship service in person, this is the time when we would pass the basket. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. This month, we are proud to support the Brazos Valley African American Museum in Bryan from April to June. The mission of the Brazos Valley African American Museum is to explore, develop, preserve, and present the cultural history and heritage of African Americans. The museum will promote individual and community awareness, understanding, pride, and respect for the contributions that African Americans have made in the past and present to the American experience. If you wish to make an offering, you can mail your check, or, for your convenience, you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom. And at the top, you will see a Donate Here link. In the chat box, you will see that link now. May each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope is there? We give thanks for these gifts we have given, for those we receive, and for each other.
Hey, everybody, come sing a song with me. Here's our note. La.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll sing a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. A rose in the winter time.
Thank you.
Now, please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again.
So friends, to answer my question of earlier, yes, you do have to. You have to get to know, perhaps even come to love other people around you. It doesn't mean you have to like them. May we accept others for who they are, as they accept us for who we are, and may all of us continue to work for a beloved community in which all are valued and none are oppressed. Our worship has ended. Our service begins. Amen.